Hello, welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it The Sound of Silence. What do I mean by that? Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the ever-present, I don't know what to call it, experience or sense. Is the nature of what we are. It's always what is. Call it background, but it's the essence of beingness. Right now, all that there is pure beingness. It's nothing else. See, that's the silence. And everything that seemed to appear in it is what I refer to as the sound. Is the sound of silence, because everything springs from silence. We are the silence, not the sound. Now, what I mean by the sound here, I'm not talking about what the ears may seem to hear or anything like that. What I'm talking is about thought. If you look at thoughts, interestingly enough, you hear them, you don't see them. Have you ever noticed that? Whenever there are thoughts, they're thinking, images, we hear those thoughts. See? We're reacting to hearing them, not to seeing them. That's why the mind is always interpreting. If you look at the sky, for example, as I'm looking at right now, I see clouds. And they don't say anything to me. It's just clouds. But if I look at the clouds and I see how the mind says, oh, that cloud is very small. Oh, this is very big. You see, that interpretation takes the appearance of a sound. Consequently, I am hearing the thoughts because the thoughts are describing. If there's no description at all, there's nothing to be heard. But the moment there's a description, that cloud is very small, this other one is very big. See, I'm hearing that. And when we see like from that perspective, you see that we're always listening or hearing the thoughts. But all of that, when we don't identify with them, when we don't believe them, they are the sound of silence, which is the background, which is where we rest always. The invitation here is to remain as the silence, even while noise seems to appear, because you are the silence. And of course, the questions that tend to arise are, yeah, but how do I function here in this world? Well, you see, all of that is still noise, is the mind trying to protect the sense of identity, thinking that if I do not believe the thoughts, I will be like a vegetable sitting in a bed doing nothing, because the recognition that I am not doing anything, that I am always that silence, and that the character is simply an expression or a projection within that silence, I still am not convinced that the character is not moving, the character is moved. You see? Life happens. I didn't choose to wake up this morning, and yet waking up seemed to have happened. The words that are coming through this instrument are not my words. They're just words that seem to appear. And when this recognition is established, I can rest. See, I can rest in the peace that we're talking about. Because I know that life is just doing it, is taking care of itself. Life is doing what it does through this particular instrument. And if I rest in the silence, by not identifying with the content of the mind, this becomes obvious. because there's many things that are happening or seem to be happening that I have no control over. The beating of the heart, the breathing, the blood flowing through all the veins. You see, I'm just talking about the seeming personal individual. I'm not even talking about, nature. Just keep it simple. See, all of these things are happening, and somehow I want to take credit for any of the actions of the seeming character, forgetting that every action is preceded by a thought. See, a thought has to come up first before the individual seems to take any action about it. But once again, what are thoughts? Thoughts are simply seeming images that appear on their own and disappear. And when this is integrated, then life is simple, because I'm always the silence, and there's a conscious awareness that I am the silence always. There's no need to say anything unless words seem to appear. There's no need to do anything unless doing seems to happen. But I always am. And all we need to do, quote unquote, which would be do nothing, but just for the sake of this this seeming dynamic, you just notice how I am so much identified with the content of the mind that I overlook the silence in which I am always resting. And the content of the mind is questions about worries, concern, what should I do, or whatever the case may be. But this reminds me of somebody asked a question to an individual who seemed to be who's very conscious of this, what we're talking here. And the question was something about, how do I deal with this particular situation, or with an addiction, or I don't know exactly, something along those lines. And this individual answered beautifully. He says, see, the problem there is that you are overlooking where the question is coming from, or who's asking the question. Because the moment I engage with that question trying to give you an answer, the mind will come up with many other possibilities, many other questions, and many more seeming answers. And that's why there's a philosophy or teaching, whatever you want to call it, that is called A Course in Miracles, that says every answer that the world gives brings up another question, leaving the first one unanswered. In other words, the moment I begin to engage in the question, then all sorts of other questions are going to come up anyway. See, nothing is going to be answered actually. Why do I have this addiction? And then I give you an answer. And then you may say, oh, okay, and then what did I do for this addiction to take place? And then we begin to dig into all sorts of possibilities. But in reality, all that there is experience only. That's all. The direct experience of what is. And if we begin to look for the questioner, you see, the moment you begin to look for the questioner, all the seeming concerns on the surface drop on their own. I believe Ramana Maharshi used to point out that when people have doubt, he says, if you just go to the root of the cause, which is, let's see if you can find a doubter. See if you can find it. And you will notice that if you do an honest investigation, you can never find the doubter, in the way that you can never find the thinker of the thoughts. Yeah, the thoughts you may seem to be able to see, and the doubt may arise, but have you noticed that the doubt is a thought? You see? It's all thoughts, that's all. And the silence is that in which all the thoughts seem to appear. A question is a thought. If it's seen as such, it'll dissolve on its own. If I overlook that, then another thought will come up which seem to be the answer. But these are two thoughts that seems to be emerging in the silence that I am. So the thoughts are the sound of the silence. And if I don't identify with the thoughts, I remain as I always am, the silence. And life unfolds as it will. In the same way that I am not choosing to beat the heart, and I'm not choosing to have the blood flowing through my veins, and I'm not even choosing to breathe, I'm not choosing any of those things. not even choosing the thoughts, nothing. There's a trust that that silence in which all of that seems to happen will also arise whatever needs to be done, or the inspiration to move the seeming character, the seeming image throughout this world, or throughout this appearance. And this is something that, although in theory sounds really nice, you need to have the direct experience, and you're having it right now. The mind is engaging in the information that is being shared and is trying to apply it to the character, when interestingly enough, the information that is being shared is to recognize that there is no character. See? As we can see through all of this, then you notice how life just unfolds. Life is unfolding. Every scene that life presents is an opportunity to see if I am identified with thoughts or if I can rest in the silence. And the point of all these videos is to always rest in the silence, is the remembering that we are the silence, not the noise. And that's why usually it doesn't have to be this way, but at least from this character's perspective, I am noticing that there's a tendency to be more in silence than engaging. You see, I see how life moves me to do a video like this, and I'm enjoying the happening, you see. But at the same time, conversations or something like that, I'm noticing that there's a tendency of not wanting to engage in these kinds of conversations unless I see that life wants this character to engage. You see the interesting thing? Because there's a tendency to rest more in the silence because there's a sweetness to it. You see? We're not suppressing anything. We're not denying anything. We're just learning to see, to look. One of the videos that I did a while ago, just look. Just looking. And put it to the test. Don't take any of the things that I'm saying as if I'm any authority of the absolute truth. No, this is just information. You see, it's noise that seems to be appearing within the silence that we both are. We're reminding ourselves that we are the silence, that all that there is the silence. And then as you rest more and more in this silence and see by direct experience how life moves you to do or not to do, and simultaneously you notice that as things take care of themselves, there's a recognition that if I am that, whatever you want to call, it's space-like, I don't know, and within that space-like, which is the intelligence, the I don't know, infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it, from which everything seems to appear and disappear in, you see? And that intelligence is in charge of everything. When there's a deep recognition and we rest in that, then you will see by or from direct experience, not theory, that life takes care of life. And you are life. You're that silence. And then it's fascinating watching the movie unfold on its own with all the seeming challenges, and you see that how the challenges will dissolve on their own. Even when at times it appears that I am making decisions in order to help to solve those problems, there's a recognition behind that says, no, these decisions are made by life. And then I just see how sometimes the problem seems to be solved and how everything seems to change, but I am. You see, that's where we're resting in the I am. And this is not something that we can talk about. It's not about talking about this. This is the direct experience that you begin to live from that space. And that's why I usually say the same thing. There's nothing to do. Simply be. You see, that's it. That's the silence. And now I can hear, quote unquote, hear, the sounds of silence, because all of them are expressions of that silence. That silence, you can call it love. You see? But in the end, it's all that there is. And I rest in the peace. I rest in peace while I'm still seeming alive. Until all this disappeared, all that this never happened anyway. But within the context of the dream, it appears as if it's happening. The only thing is that it's lived peacefully. It's lived happily. Because I know that I am. And what's going to happen throughout the day or the life, I don't know. And it doesn't matter. I don't even want to know. Because the sweetness of the silence, which is what everybody ultimately wants to experience. You see, they want the happiness, they want the joy that is right there, that is who they are, but because they're looking for it outside, meaning looking for it in thought, keep overlooking it. Right now, that is the invitation. And yes, your life will be very dynamic if that is what's supposed to happen in your life. See, a lot of the thoughts that come up, if I rest in silence, I'll be sitting on a couch, doing nothing, and that's far from the truth. I would say that when we rest in the silence, not by choice, it's because this is what happens anyway, you see. We're not the doer. If you have any questions or doubt about it, go to the second video of the series. The link is below. You can see what I'm talking about. Sitting in the silence, life unfolding, that's the invitation. And it's happening right now. It's happening always. And your life will be, if it has to be very dynamic, it will be very dynamic. It's not that you will leave the family and sit on a cave, or you will find yourself not doing the things that you enjoy doing, or you have to let go of the business that you love to run and everything. No. All that will continue if it's supposed to happen like that, because remember, life is the one that led you to do all those things. They will continue. The only thing is that they're not being seen as a source of my happiness, you see. It's not like I run the business to try to feed the ego, the sense of identity, you see. You run the business because it's something you love to do, but you don't try to show it off, telling everybody, hey, look who I am, look what I do. That completely disappears, it dissipates. If anything, now the purpose of the business is to serve, you see. Now you use your business to serve fellow mankind, because now you know that all of them are the same silence that you are. So in a sense, you're serving yourself. That's why it says, what you give, you receive. Not things, but the ever-presence, the essence of the beingness. And if you're a mother or a father, you will take care of your children, you will raise them, and if you enjoy having a family, you will have a family. Nothing is going to change except the way you're living it, from a place of the love that we're talking about, rather than fear. And nothing is done, again, to aggrandize this idea of identity. The identity can go by the wayside. Yeah, you play the role, but you don't believe in it. If you're a doctor, they call you, hey, doctor, whatever. You know you're not that doctor, whatever. Before, however, it was like, oh yeah, look, I am a doctor. This is who I am. Make sure you call me doctor, because that is important. No. When this recognition sets in, then that you don't care about it. Use it for practical purposes. Yeah, I'm doctor, whatever, but it's because that's how people need to relate. But you don't believe in it. You know that you're not that doctor. You're not the doctor. You're not your job. You're not your title. You're not the image that the world seems to see. You're none of that. You simply are. And all you're like a beacon of light, a beacon of love, because you're not identified with the conceptual mind. And like I've said before, the conceptual mind will be used for practical purposes. I need the conceptual mind to know how to turn this camera on, where to put it, and then the conceptual mind to formulate language and see. But the intention, you see, the place where it comes from, you see, it comes from that surrendering space. And then when the video is finished, I know how to close the video. I know how to go into the computer and take care of the, editing if it needs any editing. And then I just upload it to the channel, and that's it. You see, but all the things is done. See, but that doesn't make me anything special. You see, some people may want to call me, oh, if you make YouTube videos, you're a YouTuber, or if you write books, you're an author. Or if you make music, you're a musician. Well, these things I do, but they have nothing to do with who I am. What I am is the silence. All these labels are just the noise. Well, this is the inspiration that came through this character. Hope it helped. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.